What you know, Alibiers. Welcome to another episode of Pretty Lies and Alibis. I'm Gigi. Good to have you here. It's Wednesday, April 9th. We just wrapped up day 3 in the Lori Daybell trial. What a day. From the minute Lori said she was going to represent herself, I thought she'll do okay-ish with investigators or people that aren't personal to her. But when somebody is on that stand that she has an axe to grind with, it's going to get personal, and the real Lori is going to come out. And it did today, y'all. Somebody she's never met, but it was Jo Hancock, the woman who went on the date with Charles Vallow the night before he was shot and killed by Alex Cox. A few things that stood out to me throughout this whole day is Lori referring to Charles as her husband, as if they were still happily married. There was no indication that she hated him, because of course she doesn't want the jury to know that. But those of us who know what we do, it felt very dirty to hear her refer to Charles as her husband, even though technically they were still married. It was very interesting to watch the jury's reaction once Jo Hancock was on the stand, because that different side of Lori came out. And then with Christina Atwood, who is the last witness of the day, she starts introducing the jury to Charles being possessed and Lori being translated, and watching their faces, how they would look at Lori after certain things were said, and just the general look on their face. It was very reminiscent of when I was at her trial in Idaho, when that jury started hearing these bizarre details. You could see that physical reaction. And we're going to get to her testimony. But first, we are going to pick back up with Detective Coons, who was still on cross-exam. I did minimize his testimony a bit. There were just some repetitive questions by Lori, but let's sum it up. Yesterday, you said there was no stippling found on my husband's chest. No. Would it surprise you? The medical examiner said there was stippling, and the shooter would have to have been 2 to 4 feet away from my husband. The witness said not necessarily. That would be consistent with his observations at the scene. And Lori says, okay, great. Lori, if my husband were holding a bat towards you, there was an objection sustained. Lori loudly says, I'm asking his opinion. Objection sustained. Were you there when my husband was shot? No. Is your opinion an educated guess? The witness, based on known facts. Lori, did you know my husband and brother were good friends and played golf? Objection sustained. She says, I'm going somewhere with this. And the witness is like, I don't know. Lori, you never came across this information? Objection sustained. Are you aware of my husband's wishes for his funeral? Objection sustained. Did you know Charles named my brother as one of his 5 best friends? Objection sustained. Did you read all the reports in this case? The witness, mine, but none of the other reports. Lori, what is a shored wound? The witness, is created as an exit wound where the body is up against a firm surface. Lori, you took my husband's clothing and took it to a storage cage. Yes. Are you familiar with bamboo clothing? And were you aware he was wearing a $200 bamboo workout shirt? Those are designed not to tear under extreme conditions. Could this fabric cause the wound to be shored? The witness said not in this particular case. The body was on the floor where the defect was. Lori, you said a shored wound could be caused by tight clothing. It was made of bamboo. You didn't investigate that, but you had the shirt in your possession and you never checked what kind of fabric it was? No. The witness said the strength of the fabric would have to be form-fitting and close to the skin. He said Charles's shirt was not super tight. But you said tight clothing could cause a shored wound. The witness said, as explained to me, yes, but it wasn't form-fitting though. Was his shirt covering the bullet hole? Yes. How big was the hole? The witness said the size of the bullet. Lori, you saw the shirt after it had been cut off? The witness said no, it was cut down the middle. Lori, do you have a measurement for the bullet holes in his shirt? No. It's possible his shirt caused the shored wound. Objection sustained. Could any shirt cause? Objection sustained. She asked if his shirt could cause a shored wound. Objection. Ask and answer. That was sustained. Your suspicion of the body at the scene was in your report. What did you mean? The witness said, at the time, I couldn't see through his body. I had to wait for the autopsy, and the trajectory rod and the doctor's statements gave me the bullet path. Lori, where's my husband's shirt? The witness said it would be in evidence as far as he's aware. The last time he saw it was when he handed it to a tech to hang that shirt in a drying cage, and then it would have been moved to evidence lockers once it was dried. Lori, have you seen it dried? No. Lori, were you aware we had only lived there for 3 weeks? The witness, I don't know. I know it was a short time. Lori, could the defect already have been in the floor? And the witness said, not in my opinion. Lori, but it could have. And there was an objection sustained, and that happened twice. She started again, objection sustained. The witness said the divots were smaller than the defect, which was fresh and not sealed like the other divots were. Lori puts a photo of that defect in the floor up on the screen and asked, this floor wasn't tested? The witness said, not to my knowledge. Lori, your suspicion led you not to consider any alternatives? The witness said, what alternative? I collected evidence and the interviews didn't match everything I saw on scene. I'm assuming he meant the interviews with Tylee, Lori, and Alex the day of the murder. Lori, you didn't test the floor? Objection sustained. You didn't test the projectile? Objection sustained. You didn't test my husband's shirt? Objection sustained. Did you call Aloha, Carolina to ask about my husband's shirt? No. Could that wound be from my husband falling backwards and getting shot and then hitting the floor? The witness says no. Lori, were you at the Chandler Police Department at my interview? The witness said no, he was at the scene. Lori said, I thought you didn't get there until 11:45. And the witness said, no, that's the time we got the search warrant. Lori, did you see the injury on Alex? The witness didn't take a close look, but he did see the paper towel Alex was holding against his head. Are you aware if Alex's hands were swabbed for gunshot residue? And the witness said there was no need. Lori said, why? And the witness said he was the shooter. Lori said he stated it, and the witness says yes. Lori, were my hands or my daughter's hands swabbed for gunshot residue? The witness doesn't know. This next part, very interesting. Don't know where she was going with this, but I know she wouldn't implicate herself. And I kind of wonder, since she lied and implicated Tylee in JJ's murder, would she do the same for Charles? Wouldn't put it past her. And her question, do you know for a fact Alex shot the gun? Yes. Lori, after 5 years, all you know is my husband was shot twice in my residence and he died. The witness said that is oversimplified. There's a lot more information available to us. That's not all we know. Lori, you can't say for sure who shot him. The witness said, I wasn't there when it happened. The state was back up for redirect and asked where he thought the shooter was. The witness said somewhere in the opening to the kitchen and hallway and close to this rounded corner in that area. How far do you think Alex was from Charles when he shot him? The witness said 2 to 4 feet. Why is the bullet next to Charles significant in your opinion if he was upright or down? The witness said the angle into the abdomen and the exit wound is not consistent with anything but Charles being on the floor when he was shot. That chest shot exited, and had it been any other way, the defect wouldn't have been underneath his body. The bullet struck the spine before exiting, and that could cause the projectile to change directions. He tells how he starts working a scene once arriving, and he said he lets the evidence speak for itself. And the next witness, Nancy Jo Hancock, the woman Charles Vallow went on a date with the night before he was killed. She was born and raised here in Arizona. She has 5 kids and 15 grandkids. She met Charles on an LDS dating site, and when new members join, it tells you. So he sent her a message, and they started messaging each other. He asked for her phone number and they started texting and talking on the phone. They started talking in early July. She thinks maybe around July 3rd, so not very long before he was shot and killed. She said they texted a lot. He was a good talker and a texter. He was very good at banter. And there were hundreds of texts between the two before she met him in person. They would talk on the phone for hours, and she did know that he was divorcing and that he was currently living in Houston, Texas. She knew when he came to Arizona, he was going to meet with a realtor to find a place to live. So they decided to meet in person. She knew he was in life insurance and something else having to do with money, but she said she didn't ask too much about his job. Charles got very detailed about his life, and they talked a lot about Lori. Lori objects twice for leading before a question is even finished. And the judge tells Lori what leading a witness is, and then they move on. Charles told her why he was divorcing Lori. Charles told her there had been issues for several months, and the worst of it started in January of 2019. She said he talked in great detail about his relationship with Lori. He told her things that were way outside of the LDS beliefs that Lori believed in. When Charles talked about it, she said he was strangely calm and kind towards Lori in spite of what he was going through with her. Charles told her JJ was living with Lori and he had older children as well. She said in spite of all of this craziness, she thought he was kind, charming, funny, and there's a lot of craziness around him, but he was pretty awesome. Charles and Nancy Jo met up July 10th around 7 p.m. They went to a restaurant by the Santan Mall, and she said they closed the place down at 10. So they took it out in the parking lot and talked for another 45 minutes or so. She said Charles was ecstatic to see JJ and take him to school that next morning, and he was also there to look for a place to rent and to meet up with Lori's brother, Adam. They were supposed to meet up the afternoon of the 11th after he was finished with everything he had to do. She said Charles was very fit and strong, and she kind of gets emotional and said he was so excited to see JJ. She never heard him swear or use derogatory names against Lori, and she was actually surprised of how kindly he spoke of her. He said his hope was that she would be a great mother for JJ, and that stood out. She learned Charles had a life insurance policy. He told her a lot about his life. He told her he had changed that beneficiary to his sister, Kay Woodcock. And she suggested at dinner that he tell Lori that he changed the beneficiary because of things he was describing and the concerns he had for his safety, that money could come into play. Charles laughed and said he probably should and thought it was a good idea. She said she has no beef in this case and didn't know any of Lori or Charles's families at the time. After they parted ways that night, they had plans for the next day, and Charles said he hoped they could meet up for lunch. Around 11 a.m., she tried to reach out to him, and she texted asking how his morning with JJ was. She tried to call a couple of hours later. She said ultimately she thought she had just misread a good date. She found out he had been shot and killed on TV in December. This is when the kids are missing. It's all over the news. Tammy Daybell's dead. They mentioned he was killed July 11th, 2019, and it clicked. And that's when she went out with him. She thought she had deleted his text messages, but she does have the conversations. She was with Charles until about 10:45 that night. He died sometime after 7:30. So it was time for cross-exam, and Lori was up and says, "We haven't met. You said my husband said he was going through a divorce. Did you have any way to verify that?" "No." "Did it surprise you to find out we were not in the process of a divorce?" And the witness said, "Charles was." Lori said he was not. "Did it surprise you to find that out? You saw it on TV." She says, "Okay." "On the website, did he say he was?" The witness says, "I don't know." "Would you have gone out with him if you knew?" She said, "Maybe not, but we met for dinner. I wasn't sleeping with him." Lori, "Do you go on dates with married men?" Objection sustained. Lori says, "Your Honor, do I not have the right to cross-examine her?" And then she says, you didn't know he was married? The witness said, I knew his divorce wasn't final. Lori said, it wasn't started. The witness said, okay. Lori, you asked Charles if he was a good kisser. Did he answer? Objection sustained. Are you trying to tell me you went on one date with my husband and he told you our whole lives? And the witness said, don't flatter yourself. We didn't just talk about you. Lori talks about the life insurance. Did he tell you how much it was worth? 1 million. Did he tell you how much mine was worth? The witness says yes to his, but not yours. We didn't talk about you very much. Lori, when did you talk about me? Did he tell you about our other kids? Kylie, the contention between the two of them? Objection sustained. The witness said, we talked about his process of separating. What he was doing as far as the separation. Lori, you were dating this man from a website. Would you say it's common for men to be talking about their ex-wives? The witness said, it's very common. Lori says, interesting. The state says Lori talked after the witness and she apologizes to the judge. Remember yesterday, the judge told her, you can't make comments after witnesses because that's testifying, and she did it again today. Lori, you said Charles told you a lot about his wife, not his ex-wife. What did he say? The witness said, can I do a narrative? The judge asks, Lori, are you sure you want to ask that question? You will be opening a really big door. Lori said she did. And this is when we broke for lunch. And so we were all thinking, here we go. The floodgates are going to open. She is going to bring all of this in. The state's going to jump all over it. But apparently during the lunch break, her advisory council must have talked her down from that. Because after lunch, we start with, you saw on TV, my husband passed away, and you saw my sister-in-law on a show and reached out to her. The witness said she reached out to Kay after she saw Charles had died. Lori, through social media, how many times have you communicated? The witness said just once, but they do text here and there regarding other things. Lori, how many times? More than 10? The witness says maybe. Have you turned these over to the state? No. Did you turn over the text with my husband? The witness said they had the text through Charles's phone. She said, but I would have if they asked. Lori, how many times have you spoken to the prosecutor? The witness said there were texts about the logistics of her testifying. She did meet with her once, and they spoke over the phone. Lori, have you spoken to my brother, Adam? The witness said, I ran into him at my grandson's pickleball tournament the other day. Lori, how did you know that was him? She said, saw him in the media with the situation surrounding you. Lori, you introduced yourself, and the witness said, maybe. Lori, how would he know who you were? The witness said, I knew who he was. Lori, you told him you were who? The witness said, I told him my name. And she says, Adam's photo came up on a dating app, but under a different name. Lori then says, do you know what perjury is? There's an objection that's sustained. Then she asks, how long was this conversation? The witness said it was a couple of minutes or less. Lori, did you schedule a date with him? No. Lori, have you spoken to Brandon Boudreaux and when? The witness said he attends the same church as her daughter, and at one point he was at her house. They didn't speak. Her daughter was the one who told the witness who Brandon was. Lori says, how do you know who he was? The witness says, my daughter knows your story, and I know your story, and all she had to say was, that's Brandon Boudreaux. Lori, did you speak to any other law enforcement? Yes, Detective Moffitt interviewed me. Lori, were you aware when you went on this date? I didn't know my husband was on dating sites. The witness said he was under the impression you were having an affair. Lori, you met him July 3rd. You had your date on July 10th. So 7 days later, you knew my husband for a week. Did you have any contact with him after that? The witness said he was dead. Clearly, I didn't have contact with him. Lori asks about the witness contacting Kay. She said, I expressed my condolences for her loss. Charles told her how much he loved Kay and how much he loved JJ. Lori said, and Lori interrupts her and says, thank you, that's enough. Lori, that was a year after my husband passed away. The witness said 10 months, maybe. and there were no more questions from Lori. But you see Lori as almost this high school jealous ex-girlfriend, girlfriend, whatever you want to call her. But at the same time, y'all, she is planning to have her husband killed. She left Charles for Chad Daybell. She is having an affair. She is the one who started having the affair. And I just think it's funny that a lot of this testimony was my husband, he wasn't divorcing. It was so bizarre, y'all. I don't know if it was a tactic to maybe have the jury think Lori was scorned and Lori had been done wrong, but hats off to Miss Nelson for number one, putting out you were having an affair. And also, even though she didn't know Charles very long, you don't have to know somebody for a big length of time to develop a fast and furious bond with them, even if it's just platonic. And I think what she did today, getting up on that stand, getting emotional at times, talking about how kind Charles was, she did Charles right. I think she was amazing as a witness. She got under Lori's skin. She pushed Lori's buttons and she did not flinch, but it got Lori wiggling. We were all kind of joking over lunch. Is this going to be the afternoon that the belt is utilized and she falls on the ground and flops like a fish? Because she was getting very worked up, but obviously she did not go in the direction we thought she would. On redirect, they mentioned that she reached out to police after finding out Charles had been murdered. Have you ever tried to talk to others to learn about if what Charles told you was accurate? She said, no, he actually told me a lot more. Did you tell police all he told you? And she said, no, I really thought I would be interviewed again. When she interviewed with investigators, it was more of an ask and answer. And she was just really surprised they didn't call her back for another interview. She did not talk to Adam about the case, but did recognize him from those media reports, and she knew he would be testifying in this trial. She said she met him about a week and a half ago. The state, you knew Charles for a week. Did he make an impression on you? She said he was a large personality. It would be hard not to be impressed by Charles. His wit, his big personality with his Southern accent. The state asked, where was Lori and Charles's relationship that you knew of? She said, well, I knew they broke up, briefly reconciled, and Charles was beginning the divorce process again. And Charles was excited. He was going to be done with all the craziness. He was back to working with an attorney, but she said she told Charles no one would want to be serious with him until he was further along in the process. And she said, including myself. At the time, she would not have entertained a relationship with Charles, but he was fun. So she definitely would have hung out with him again. There was a jury question. Did Charles ever express to you any indication of stress? And the witness said, definitely. And that was it for her. What a strong witness for the state. She really held her own and she did not seem rattled for 1 second. The last witness of the day, Christina Atwood, she was part of this early group, but got out after she started thinking things were getting crazy, and she was right. She is LDS. She met Lori at church sometime after 2010, and she did know Charles, Tylee, and JJ. She had more contact with Lori. Her and her family went to Hawaii in 2015, and they stopped by to visit, but Charles was not home when they were there. She identifies Lori in the courtroom. She says she doesn't know if Tylee was there the weekend they visited, and she mentions they also know Lori's older son, Colby, through church. When the witness was in Hawaii and saw Lori and JJ, they visited on a Sunday for about an hour or two, and then a couple of hours on the beach after that, and that was it. She didn't have any major social interaction with Lori and Charles other than really saying hello. In April of 2021, Christina spoke with an investigator and told him in the beginning of 2019, Lori said she wanted to go to Hawaii. She can't remember some things, so the state played a portion of her interview that only she could hear on the witness stand with headphones on to re-jog her memory. In that interview, Christina told investigators Lori wanted her to go to Hawaii with her sometime in January of 2019. This is that time frame where Lori disappeared for over 70 days. Lori reached out to her about things going on in her life, like her marriage. She shared that she was upset with Charles and told Christina she was not living with him, and indicated she had gone to Hawaii and was not telling many people she was there. Charles was back in Texas and had JJ. Tylee was staying with Alex, and she said Charles tried to have her temple recommend taken away. And she says that's the reason Lori disappeared. I think it's a combination of that and not wanting to be served with divorce papers and that order of protection as well. She did not want Charles to know where she was. Christina found out Lori went to Idaho in December of 2019. She learned Lori was back in Arizona, and Lori asked her to come meet with a group in maybe February of 2019. Zulema, Melanie Gibb, Nicole, and Serena were also there. Serena was visiting from out of state. That meeting was at Zulema's house. JJ was still in Texas with Charles, and Tylee was still with Alex. Lori was also living with Alex at this point. Christina only knew Lori and Nicole out of the whole group. And at the meeting, Lori said something about Charles that stood out to her. She was concerned about dark spirits plaguing him and said he was possessed by dark spirits. They met twice in the evenings that weekend. Lori was talking about this dark spirit and how Charles was possessed, and she also had a name of who he was possessed by. She could not remember that name on the stand. Lori talked about Charles being possessed more than once and told all the women at this meeting that Charles was possessed. She said Lori had multiple phone numbers at this point. She knows of 2 cell phones as well as a landline. Lori wasn't working, and she never knew Lori to work. There was also a Zoom meeting with this group. And again, Lori talked about Charles being possessed and being controlled by dark spirits. Lori talked to Christina about castings and praying out this entity. Christina was in Lori's presence when Lori prayed for that. And the last time they all got together was at Zulema's on June 9th, 2019. Alex, Zulema, Melanice, Nicole, and Melanie Gibb were there. Another woman who was a friend of one of the ladies was there as well. She had met Melanice before at Alex's between the 3 meetings that took place. But this was the first time she had met Alex, and her impression of Alex is she was put off. He was loud and outspoken. She was uncomfortable with what he was talking about. Lori was still saying Charles was possessed. There was a prayer, and they were asked to fast in preparation. So they gathered outside, had a prayer, went inside and broke their fast. Alex was part of that prayer outside. She heard Alex say he wished he could just kill Charles. Lori was there when Alex said this, and she did not react at all. Lori never said, "You can't kill my husband," or "Why would you say that?" Christina said she was very disturbed by this. She also heard Lori say that she had crushed up a lot of JJ's medication and put it in Charles's drink mix. Christina met with Lori the next day and said if something happened to Charles, she would have to go to the police. Lori downplayed it and said they were being silly and didn't mean anything by it. She told her she did not give Charles as many medications as she had said the day before. But Christina started noticing things from outside the LDS faith coming from Lori. She told Christina she didn't need to repent anymore. She said she was beginning to become a translated being and said she knew everybody in the group in prior lives. Now, when Christina said Lori said she was beginning to become a translated being, one of the jurors kind of rolled his eyes and grinned. Lori started having issues with Serena around this time. Started talking negative about her. Lori told Christina she did not believe Serena was going to be good after all. But after Christina heard those statements about the drinks and Alex's statements starting in June, she didn't meet up with Lori anymore. She was invited to a lunch in August. She didn't say if she went or not. She was texted that Charles had been killed, and she heard it was a brother-in-law of his. It was a while before she actually learned it was Alex. Lori distanced herself from Christina after Christina expressed concerns. And get this, Lori did not cross-examine Christina. And maybe it's going to be that way with people she actually knows that's only going to get up and speak the truth. How can Lori discredit the truth? She may try, but I think some of these witnesses will tell her, you know the truth. You can't handle the truth. Anyways, tomorrow we will see what happens, y'all. Wild day in court, I have to say. If you did not get to watch that cross-examine of the woman Charles went out with, go to my YouTube channel. So don't forget, tomorrow I'll be live streaming again. I'll do a 1-hour Q&A live with Law and Crime Network. So stay tuned on the channel during lunch and you'll see that. And until tomorrow, hope you guys have a good rest of your evening and we will see you soon.